Welcome back to the Holy Discussion. If you're enjoying these deep dives into the world of faith and spirituality, don't forget to hit that subscribe button, like this episode, and share it with your friends. And if you want to be notified when new episodes drop, make sure to tap that bell icon. Now, today we're diving deep into a spiritual journey that really makes you think. Imagine growing up in a devout Christian household that exploring Eastern religions and New Age practices, only to eventually circle back to Christianity. That's exactly the path this individual took, and we're going to unpack it all with the help of our expert.
Looking forward to it.
What I find fascinating is this back and forth, this push and pull between different belief systems. It raises so many questions about the nature of faith, the search for meaning, and how our personal experiences shape our spiritual journeys.
It's a lifelong process for sure.
And to guide us through this fascinating story, we have our expert here who spent years analyzing these kinds of journeys, the appeal of different belief systems, and the twists and turns people take on their quest for truth. What are your initial thoughts when you hear about someone taking this kind of winding spiritual path?
You know what strikes me is that this kind of back and forth isn't all that uncommon, especially when you consider the cultural landscape we live in. There's often a dominant religion, like Christianity in this case, but there's also this increasing exposure to alternative spiritualities. So it's almost like people are naturally drawn to explore different options to see what resonates with them on a personal level.
That makes sense. It's like a buffet of beliefs, and you're trying to figure out what nourishes your soul.
Yeah, I like that analogy.
So let's start at the beginning. This individual grew up in a small town, and they describe their childhood as deeply religious. They talk about witnessing intense spiritual practices like speaking in tongues and even feeling a call to preach at a young age. What kind of impact does that kind of early exposure to charismatic Christianity have on someone's spiritual development?
It's huge. It really sets the stage for a faith that's very experiential, very focused on emotions, and feeling a direct connection with the divine. So it's not just about believing a set of doctrines. It's about feeling the presence of God in a very real and tangible way. And for some people, that can be incredibly powerful and formative.
Yeah, I could see how that would make a lasting impression, especially at such a young age.
Absolutely.
But then things take a turn. The individual talks about their family experiencing what they call church hurt, and they end up moving away from organized religion for a while. Can you talk a bit more about this idea of church hurt? What are some of the common ways people experience this, and how does it impact their faith journey?
Church hurt is a really complex issue, and it can manifest in so many different ways. Sometimes it's about hypocrisy, seeing leaders or members of the church acting in ways that contradict their professed beliefs. Other times it's about feeling judged or excluded, like you don't quite fit in or measure up to the church's expectations. And sometimes it's about experiencing trauma or abuse within a religious context.
That's heartbreaking.
It really is. Whatever the cause, church hurt can leave deep wounds. It can make people question everything they thought they knew about God and faith. And for some, it leads to a complete rejection of religion altogether. But for others, like the individual, in this case, it becomes a catalyst for a different kind of spiritual search. A search for something that feels more authentic and less hurtful.
That makes sense. It's like you're trying to reconcile this idea of a loving God with the pain you've experienced within a religious community.
Right.
And for this individual, that search eventually leads them back to Christianity, but this time through a very strict Christian school and youth group. It sounds like there was a lot of emphasis on fear sin and the need for constant repentance. How do you think this more restrictive approach to Christianity contrasted with their earlier experiences, and what kind of internal conflict might it have created?
It's a stark contrast, for sure. You go from this very experiential, emotionally driven faith to a much more rigid and rule-based system. And for someone who's already experienced church hurt, this kind of environment can feel incredibly suffocating.
Yeah, I can imagine.
You're constantly being reminded of your shortcomings, your sinfulness, and the threat of eternal damnation. It's not exactly a recipe for spiritual freedom or joy.
No, it definitely sounds like a recipe for anxiety and self-doubt.
Unfortunately, that can be the case.
And to make matters even more complicated, the individual moved to New York, a much more secular environment where they start experimenting with alcohol and marijuana. They actually pinpoint marijuana use as a trigger for a profound shift in their thinking, especially when it comes to religion and the meaning of life. Have you observed this connection between substance use and spiritual questioning in other individuals you've studied?
Absolutely. Substances like marijuana can have a way of amplifying your existing anxieties and uncertainties.
Okay.
They can make you question everything, including your deeply held beliefs. And for someone who's already wrestling with doubts about religion, this can be a really pivotal moment.
So it's not necessarily that the substance itself is causing the questioning, but rather that it's acting as a catalyst, bringing these underlying doubts to the surface.
Exactly. It's like it removes the filters and suddenly you're seeing things from a completely different perspective. And for some people that can be incredibly liberating, while for others it can be quite terrifying.
And in this case, it sounds like it was a bit of both. They start talking about feeling judged and constricted by Christianity. They're drawn to the perceived inclusivity of Eastern religions and the idea of connecting with nature. What do you think is driving this shift toward Eastern philosophies?
I think there are a few things at play here. First, there's this sense of disillusionment with Christianity. They've experienced church hurt. They've been exposed to a very rigid and fear-based version of the faith, and it just doesn't feel authentic anymore.
Makes sense.
Second, there's this natural human longing for acceptance and belonging. Eastern religions, with their emphasis on interconnectedness and finding peace within, can be very appealing to someone who's feeling alienated by their own religious tradition. And finally, there's this growing awareness of the natural world and a desire to connect with something larger than oneself. Eastern philosophies often incorporate nature into their spiritual practices, which can be incredibly grounding and fulfilling.
So it's like they're seeking a spirituality that feels more holistic, more in tune with both their inner world and the world around them.
Exactly. They're craving a sense of wholeness, a way of integrating their spiritual beliefs with their lived experience.
And this search for wholeness leads them to explore a whole range of practices and beliefs, from Hinduism and Buddhism to meditation and even psychedelics. They're searching for lasting peace, trying to achieve ego death, to experience a state of oneness. You've spoken before about the appeal of these transformative experiences, especially for people who are seeking a deeper connection with something beyond the everyday. What are some of the key motivations you've observed in individuals who are drawn to these kinds of practices?
What's really interesting is that these individuals are often seeking a direct experience of the divine, something that transcends the limitations of language and dogma. They're looking for a way to break free from the confines of the ego, to tap into a sense of interconnectedness and universal consciousness.
It sounds almost like a mystical quest, like they're trying to unlock a hidden dimension of reality.
That's a great way to put it. It is a quest, and it can be incredibly challenging and rewarding.
And for this individual, that quest takes them deep into the world of psychedelics. They experiment with mushrooms and DMT, believing these substances offer a glimpse into a deeper reality. But at the same time, they also speak about reaching a glass ceiling with these experiences. What do you think they mean by that? And what does it tell us about the limitations of using psychedelics for spiritual growth?
I think what they're describing is a common experience among people who use psychedelics for spiritual purposes. There's this initial sense of awe and wonder, a feeling of having tapped into something profound and transformative. But eventually there's a realization that these experiences, while powerful, are fleeting.
So it's like catching a glimpse of another world, but not being able to fully enter it.
Yes, and I think that's where the glass ceiling comes in. There's a sense that you've reached the limits of what these substances can offer. They can provide insights, they can open your mind to new possibilities, but they can't do the work for you. True spiritual growth requires a different kind of commitment, a more sustained and disciplined effort.
It's like psychedelics can be a doorway, but you have to walk through it and keep going on your own. You can't just stay on the doorstep.
That's a great way to put it.
So what happens next? Where does this individual's journey take them after hitting that glass ceiling with psychedelics?
Well, they start to delve deeper into the practices of gurus and monks, admiring their perceived peace and wisdom. There's this allure of a secluded life dedicated entirely to spiritual practice. But at the same time, they also acknowledge that the monastic life isn't practical for most people.
It's an interesting dilemma, isn't it? The idea of escaping the complexities of everyday life to pursue spiritual enlightenment is certainly appealing. But then there's the reality of relationships, responsibilities, and the fact that most of us aren't cut out for a life of solitude and asceticism.
It's a tough balance.
So how do they reconcile this tension between the ideal and the practical?
That's a great question, and it's one that we'll explore further in the next part of our deep dive. Because it's this tension that ultimately leads to a major turning point in their journey, one that forces them to confront the practical implications of their spiritual beliefs and to make some tough choices about the direction of their life.
Sounds like we have a lot more to uncover in part 2 of our deep dive into this extraordinary spiritual journey.
We sure do. Stay tuned.
See you there.
Picking up where we left off, this individual is grappling with the allure of a monastic life while acknowledging its impracticality. This internal conflict spills over into their personal life.
Oh, this is where it gets really interesting. Their evolving spirituality clashes head-on with their fiancé's desire for a traditional Christian family. Talk about a clash of worldviews.
You hit the nail on the head. Suddenly, it's not just about personal exploration. It's about values, family, and the future of their children. This conflict forces a reckoning. Can these two paths coexist?
You can almost feel the pressure building. And it seems to lead to some difficult decisions. They talk about infidelity ending the engagement and starting a new relationship with someone deeply immersed in New Age practices like tarot and crystals.
It's a period of intense seeking, almost a rebellion against the confines they felt before. They're trying to merge their spiritual explorations with their life. But it's clear this new relationship, while exciting, lacks the stability they crave.
This is where the narrative takes a darker turn. They describe a terrifying experience during a trip to Mexico, a perceived demonic encounter with the overwhelming smell of rotting flesh. This leads to the end of that relationship and a major reevaluation of their path.
This encounter, whether interpreted literally or symbolically, is pivotal. It shatters the framework of their New Age beliefs, forcing them to confront the possibility that they've been dabbling in something dangerous. Fear and uncertainty push them towards familiar ground.
They retreat back to nature, the comforting landscape of Hawaii. It's during a solo camping trip that things shift dramatically again. What is it about nature that seemed to facilitate these moments of spiritual clarity?
Nature strips away the noise, the complexities they've been grappling with. It's a return to a primal connection, a space for deep introspection. In this raw state, they're more open to change.
They bring their tarot cards on this trip, but as soon as they start using them, a dark presence overwhelms them. This prompts them to burn the cards, experiencing a powerful emotional release. What's your take on this dramatic act?
Burning the tarot cards is symbolic purification. They're rejecting those New Age tools, associating them with negativity. It's a break from the recent past and a turning point towards something new.
And what's even more surprising is they reach out to their ex-fiancé, the one they had heard. They reconcile, and she becomes a steady influence, gently opening them up to a different perspective on Christianity.
This reconciliation is huge. It represents a return to love, stability, and forgiveness values embodied by their ex-fiancé. She's a grounding force, offering an alternative to the fear and uncertainty they've been experiencing.
Then comes the COVID-19 quarantine, which seems to accelerate their transformation. They immerse themselves in sermons, quit smoking abruptly, and rediscover the Bible. What role do you think isolation and global uncertainty played in this process?
Quarantine forced introspection. Removed from distractions, they confront their spiritual longing. The sermons and Bible offer familiar comfort, resonating with their childhood faith in a new way. It's as if the pieces are falling into place.
It's like a homecoming, but not a simple return. They reconnect with their Hawaiian culture, sensing God's presence in nature while still questioning some traditional Christian beliefs.
This cultural reconnection is vital. It's about integrating their journey with their identity, finding a faith that honors their roots while embracing their evolution. It's a unique expression of Christianity shaped by their experiences.
This leads them to marry their fiancé, driven by the conviction it's God's will. Their joint baptism and marriage symbolize a surrender to both God's plan and their personal calling.
This dual ceremony beautifully encapsulates their transformation. Baptism signifies cleansing rebirth, a commitment to a new life in Christian faith. Marriage symbolizes stability, a foundation built on shared love and values.
Their journey doesn't end there. This spiritual transformation leads them to explore purpose and ministry. What happens when this personal quest intersects with the desire to serve others?
This is where things get really exciting. It's like their entire journey, all the searching and questioning has been preparing them for this moment of clarity. They describe their perspective shifting to a kingdom mentality, a focus on God's purpose for their life. We'll dive deeper into that in the next part of our discussion.
So we left off with this kingdom mentality idea, right? Like this new lens they're looking through.
Yeah, it's a shift from like me to a bigger picture, like what's God doing and how do I fit in?
And that leads them to this leadership conference. They think it's for leaders in general, but it's a pastor's gathering.
Talk about a divine setup. It's like they're being nudged, towards something specific. Even their reaction is interesting. They hesitate with that pastor label, even jokingly agreeing to wear like a clergy shirt just for the clothes.
I get that. It's like still processing it all, but there's that sense of, okay, I'll go where I'm led, even if it feels weird.
Exactly. And then boom, this pivotal moment at the conference. A pastor's talking about Loi Kanaka, linking tarot farming to cultivating people. specifically Hawaiians.
Wow, that's powerful. Connecting their heritage with their faith and purpose. We talked about how important that cultural piece was for them.
It's huge. This isn't just Christianity 101. It's faith that honors their roots.
Yeah,
A&D speaks to their community's needs.
And that calling gets even clearer at Camp Agape,
Right.
working with kids of incarcerated parents. They see that pain, the longing for connection. It sparks something in them.
Camp Agape is where it all clicks. Personal growth meets real-world need. It's not just about their own journey anymore. It's about serving these kids.
And that's where they embrace it.
Mm.
Full on, God's calling them to minister to Hawaiian youth.
That's the key. It's not just wanting to help people. It's a specific call. It's using their experiences to make a difference.
And get this, they don't even have to announce it. The pastors at the camp see it. They offer them a position right there.
It's amazing, their willingness, their heart. It opens doors like it was meant to be.
Now they're leading a program for those kids post-camp, nurturing their faith, being there for them. It's beautiful how this journey led to such service.
It really is. It's finding that sweet spot, your passion, your gifts, and what the world needs.
But it doesn't stop there. They have a message for those exploring Eastern religions, New Age stuff, anything outside traditional Christianity. What stands out to you?
Their compassion. They don't judge those still searching. They get it. But for them, true fulfillment is in Jesus.
They use the term works-based for those other practices, contrasting it with the grace and freedom they feel in Christianity.
It's nuanced.
Right.
Right. Not saying other paths are wrong, but they led them to a different understanding of what brings true peace.
Surrender seems key. Giving up the old ways for Jesus.
It's powerful, but surrender's not weakness. It's aligning with a higher purpose. Like they said, I'm done, I give up, I want only you.
Such a powerful story. That longing for connection, meaning purpose, it's universal.
This story makes us think, is faith rigid rules, or is it seeking, questioning, surrendering to something bigger? Their path shows it's rarely straightforward.
Absolutely. We all have unique paths, ways of connecting. The beauty's in that diversity. All these ways we understand our place in the world.
These deep dives let us walk in someone else's shoes, broadening our view of faith and what it means to be human. It makes you wonder, how can we better support each other's journeys wherever they lead? That's something for us all to think about as we continue on our own paths.